Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen, and this is Camilla. We've got two small boys, Nate and Cade, and we were missionaries in Papua New Guinea for 4 years as a pilot family. And welcome to another live interview from around the world with MAF.
Today we have landed in Bangladesh, and we have the privilege of meeting a float plane pilot. And I really wish we could have had the actual experience of landing on the water, because I've never had that. But unfortunately, we're live on the internet and we can't quite have that experience. But thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them underneath in the comments section, and there'll be somebody to answer your questions.
So today our special guest is Tilley from Bangladesh. He's the float plane and I think chief pilot. And yeah, for me, I've always wanted to fly float planes, and so I'm very envious of that. But yeah, so let's hear what he has to say. Welcome, Chad. How are you?
No, doing good. It's monsoon season here in Dhaka, Bangladesh, so we have a lot of rain and heat and humidity, but that's kind of part of the course. But other than that, doing really well. Thank you. Glad to be here, and thank you for taking the time to reach out to us here in Bangladesh and make us part of this this session.
No, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. We know that your time is very precious. So, Chad, why don't you share a little bit about what it's like being a float plane pilot? Obviously, we have experience in being on the field and being a normal aircraft pilot, but just explain a little bit about that and how you became a part of the MAF family.
I've been working with MAF for well over 20 years in mission aviation. I worked for over 8 years in East Africa, in Nairobi, Kenya. And then I've been here in Dhaka, Bangladesh with my family for over 14 years now, going on 14 years. When I was doing how I became a float plane pilot in Bangladesh, I was actually flying a seaplane on Lake Victoria in Kenya. Many years ago, and when Bangladesh, the MAF Bangladesh program got a new amphibian caravan, they asked me to come over and help to do some training with the pilots here. And so I said to my wife, I said, do you know where Bangladesh is? And she's like, I think it's near India. And so I pulled out an encyclopedia and an atlas, and I was reading up and looking, where in the world is Bangladesh? Because MAF was asking me to go help with some training. And I started reading about it being, a Muslim country, and I started reading about it being really hot and humid and so densely populated. And I started reading about all these things. I told her, I said, oh, wow. I said, I think I can go and survive a 2-week training trip and come back to Nairobi, Kenya. I said, that'd be great. So when I got here, though, and I saw how MAF is using one amphibian, we now have two, but using the one amphibian here, we're unlike a lot of countries in the world where you have a lot of other small aviation operators, like in Nairobi, Kenya, we have MAF, we have other operators as well who provide flight services, charter flight services. But here in Bangladesh, there was only one seaplane that was basically serving at that time 144 million people, and it had 8,000 kilometers of rivers. It's one of the most, waterlogged countries in the world. The seaplane, the amphibian, was such an amazing tool to help all the organizations that we serve and to help so many people in need. When I saw that firsthand, I said, I want to be part of that. And so our family moved from Nairobi, Kenya. And as I mentioned earlier, I've been here now over 14 years. So the seaplane, yes, it's fun to fly, but most importantly, it's an amazing tool, and it literally allows us to go anywhere in the country in about 40 minutes. And sometimes even going 2 kilometers, it takes me over 40 minutes in my car to go to the grocery store, because we live in a city of 30 million people. So the traffic is very congested, but I can go to any part of the country in about 45 minutes. Even to a remote island in the Bay of Bengal, I can go there in 45 minutes. So, I mean, it's an amazing tool to help facilitate the work of the people who are working here, as well as to assist with, we have 3 major disaster seasons here in the country. We have 2 cyclone seasons, and one in May and one in November. And we're just coming out of our flooding season. I was recently doing some flood survey flights with the U.S. Embassy. I took the U.S. Ambassador last week up to see where all the flood was happening, because in modern times, this was the third worst season that we've had. We had 40% of the country was completely underwater this season. Back in the the 80s, early 90s, we were at 60% at one time, but we're now at 40% this year. So we roughly had about 5 million people displaced. It affected 5 million people, I should say, and we had over 540,000 families affected by that flooding here in the country. So our partners with USAID and CARE were going up and helping coordinate that with the government of Bangladesh, and we were using the seaplane to be part of that. So that's an example of how the seaplane can be used in this kind of context.
Great, yeah, that sounds, you're a great role there. What would you say some of your biggest challenges have been, as well as some of your excitements, so ups and downs?
I think for us, some of the challenging things for us is our monsoon weather. We have 8 months of monsoon weather. So when I see pictures of them flying with crystal clear blue skies and stuff like that, I get very envious, because that's not our situation here in Bangladesh. We have a lot of heavy rainstorm, thunderstorm. Even in our dry season, we have very low visibility, a lot of fog during that time. So we fly in quite challenging weather, IFR conditions, kind of year round. That would be number one. The second challenge for us is because we're a seaplane, unlike a runway, where runways can typically be predictable, especially if they're paved. And even sometimes when you go to mud runways, dirt runways, it's a dirt runway, or there's patches, certain areas of the runway can be soggy or soft. It's predictable. When you land on water, you can go to the same place, and every single time you go to the same place, it's completely different. So wind, tide, current, boats, people putting their putting nets out, putting big bamboo things. Everything. It's a waterway that everybody shares. And we're a very densely populated country, so that means everybody's using it. So even though we go to the same destination, we're always finding something different. So you have to be kind of prepared to how you're going to improvise and adapt to make sure that the flight goes efficiently as well as safely and seamlessly. So the people on the back of the plane don't even really realize all those different variables are happening, but you're just making that all happen. So as a seaplane pilot, I find that very rewarding to be able to do that, so that passengers can have a very safe and meaningful experience.
Yeah, you're making me very envious right now. I wish I could do all those things that you're doing. As I say, I dream to fly a float plane. Okay, so with your experience in the world of MAF and also in aviation, could you share some tips maybe on, if for future people who would like to fly for MAF or just be involved with MAF, so the next generation, what steps would they need to sort of take to get where you are today?
So obviously our HR department and our flight training department have very clear and well-defined steps, and there's been a lot of great improvements about the clarity and what they recommend in our orientation periods and standardization periods. So MAF prepares everyone really effectively in that regard on the MAF side. So I'm not going to want to say anything contrary to that. Yeah. But I will tell people, I would encourage, a lot of people want to come to MAF right away, right out of school or something like that. I like to tell people, I've been a training captain for pretty much my whole time in MAF. I would tell people the most thing I would like people to do is to actually work work for a charter company, work for a flight company, work for an airline, work for something, so that you have practical work experience that you can bring, so that when you come to your program in MAF, you have other industry experience. So I encourage people to actually try to get out and work in whatever type of capacity in aviation. so that when you bring that to our math team, we can learn from you. We can learn what your experiences have been. We can learn about what you've done. And at the same time, that kind of blended approach, you'll have the math training plus your background training. You just won't have one view of things. You'll have several things. And I think that will make you a more well-rounded pilot. So that would be one thing I would encourage people to do, is try to get much outside math experience, I should say, flying experience, before you, as you're progressing in.
Are you still there, Chad? I don't know if you... Okay, you stopped talking. The video froze a little bit, so we just were wondering if you'd stopped talking or it was...
Sorry.
But it's fine. Yeah, no, that's great. And for those people watching, the viewers, if any of you would like to get involved in MAF in any way, there's not only pilot positions available, there's many, many other positions that allow the pilots to actually fly, that are very essential, from school teachers right all the way through to engineers and office guys. So if you feel like you want to get involved in the world of MAF, just contact MAF South Africa or MAF UK or wherever you are in the world, and look at the MAF website and just see what positions are available, and then contact them, and then they will explain the sort of different procedures for different roles. And yeah, so thank you.
Chad, I just have maybe one or two more questions for you, because this is very interesting to me. So this float plane that you fly, it obviously, because it's bigger than your average caravan, you're able to fly in extreme conditions, and obviously you've got the floats, but you obviously are flying with instruments, but are there any conditions you're not able to fly in?
I mean, we check the weather before we fly. So if there's a big system or big thunderstorm or something like that, we wait for that to move. We're not a very large country. So like I mentioned earlier, we can be anywhere in 30, 40, 50 minutes maximum. So we have the bit of the luxury that, we can check the weather radar. There's been a lot of improvements in Bangladesh over the years. So right now we've got some good radar pictures, so I can see where my destination, what the current weather is. So if I see a large thunderstorm, or I see a large system, like a squall system going through, then we'll just wait. You know what I mean? We'll just wait. I mean, I've had some cases where I've been heading back into Dhaka, and there's a gigantic thunderstorm over Dhaka. And I know when that happens, because it's a large international airport, all the airline traffic stacks up. In addition to accommodating us, they accommodate all the airline traffic, and so airlines will go in the hold. So, I mean, sometimes I've been in the hold with airliners stacked up over the outer marker. But then sometimes, one time I actually told the controller I saw a river below me in a community, and I just told the controller, I said, below me, I said, I'm just going to land here and wait. And he said, okay, great. So I didn't keep going to Dhaka. I just stopped. I just circled around, found a river to land on. I just landed, got in the back of the airplane, sat there. After about 30 minutes, I called on my telephone. I called the center controller. I said, hey, how's the airport? He said, oh yeah, it's open now. Why don't you give it another 20 minutes before you take off and head in? So the float plane can have some kind of, it can be kind of cool that way too, that you have some of that flexibility as well.
In Papua New Guinea, we didn't have that IFR option on the single engines. So we spent many an hour sort of trying to climb over weather, or go through gaps in weather, or land somewhere and wait, or have to turn back. So it's just nice to have the IF option and also the floats, because I mean, in Papua New Guinea as well, there's some really nice big rivers. You'd probably have to worry about logs floating down them, but yeah, it's great to have those options.
My very last question, Chad, and I'm hoping it will be a short one, and that's a bit of a pun. What is the shortest or the smallest area that you would land on or in Bangladesh?
So we like to, our rivers, we want to have the river about 75 meters wide by 1,200 meters long. So that's the kind of stretch. You know, a lot of times the rivers are twisty and windy. We like to have a nice stretch about 1,200 meters long. The nice thing about a seaplane is you can have a curve. So we don't necessarily need it fully straight, but it's sometimes very hard to have a sharp bend in the river. But in terms of short landing, you can probably land the airplane in probably, I'd say, less than 200 meters.
Okay.
Because the airplane with the water, once you touch down in the water, there's so much drag underneath. You can actually do the airplane with a stop. You can really do a short field landing. So I'd say within less than 200 meters, you could land the airplane. Mm-hmm.
My heart is racing, and I sense that you may be a bit of an adrenaline junkie. But apart from that, you rely on the grace of God every day. And I'm sure, and I don't doubt that you have a lot of people praying for you and supporting you. So we're going to end off now. It's been really, really wonderful chatting to you.
Yeah.
It's been such a privilege. Thank you for your time, especially, in these times where you have limited staff and you have a huge role. So thank you very much. And we actually look forward to landing in another country next week. Not quite sure where that will be, but it's been wonderful being in Bangladesh with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Right. Cheers.
Bye.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Chad.